I always believed anniversaries carried a sacred weight. They were reminders of what two people promised each other when no one else was watching. That night, I wanted to honor ours. My meeting was canceled unexpectedly, and instead of informing my wife, I thought a surprise would create a moment we would remember for the rest of our lives. I imagined candles, music, perhaps a quiet dinner where we could talk about the future. I stopped by a bakery on the way home and bought her favorite cake. I even rehearsed a speech in the car about how grateful I was to have her by my side. I entered the house feeling confident that love was still something real. The lights were dim, not unusual for late evening. I placed the cake on the kitchen counter and started walking toward the bedroom. Halfway there, I paused. Something was wrong. There was laughter echoing down the hallway, but not the laughter I knew. It was softer, rehearsed, almost shy. My heart tried to deny what my ears already understood. I pushed the bedroom door gently and stopped before it opened fully. My surprise ended there. Through that narrow opening, I saw her. She was not alone. She was locked in an embrace with another man. Their bodies were tangled like vines fighting for space, and she whispered words I once believed belonged to me. The room suddenly felt smaller, and for a second, I could not breathe. Strangely, I did not feel anger. I felt displaced, like a guest in my own life. I waited for shock to crush me, but it did not. The man looked over his shoulder, expecting fear or rage. Instead, he laughed. She laughed as well. Not embarrassed, not frightened, amused. I stood there, invisible, watching them enjoy the destruction of something I had spent years building. The laughter hurt more than the betrayal. Betrayal reveals a flaw. Laughter confirms satisfaction. They believed I posed no threat. They believed I would crumble, shout, or beg. My silence was their entertainment. I took a step back before either of them noticed me. I walked to the kitchen, closed the cake box, and sat in the living room. The clock on the wall kept ticking while my marriage expired in the next room. I listened to every sound, every whisper, every sigh. With each second, something inside me hardened. I waited, not because I wanted to see more, but because I needed to understand the truth. I needed to accept that the person who once held my hand during storms was now inviting thunder into our home. At some point, I heard the shower running. I knew it was over. A woman who still had love left in her heart would at least pause, would at least show hesitation. She did not. She was cleaning herself from a moment she believed I would never discover. She did not know that the real dirt was already on her soul. I walked to the bedroom door again. It was closed now. The house felt like a museum of lies. I stood in the darkness until the water stopped. I could have confronted her. I could have screamed. I chose not to. People reveal who they are through actions, not explanations. That night, she revealed everything. When morning came, she kissed me as if nothing had happened. She did not know I had seen everything. She did not know that her marriage ended the moment she laughed. I replied calmly and left for work. She thought I was the same man. She was wrong. I was no longer married. I was preparing for consequences. The morning after that night felt strangely calm. I expected chaos inside me, yet there was only clarity. She behaved as if nothing had happened. She hummed while preparing her coffee, asked about my trip, and even placed her hand on my shoulder as though she were still my wife in every sense of the word. Her confidence surprised me. She thought betrayal was something a man would swallow if he wanted to keep a home. She expected tears, apologies for arriving too early, perhaps even a pathetic attempt to win her back. Her arrogance insulted my intelligence. It also gave me freedom. I sat across from her at the dining table. I watched her sip her coffee with the same lips that whispered lies to another man. A strange distance had formed inside me. I was present in the room, yet emotionally gone. She asked if we could talk. The tone suggested she wanted to negotiate her guilt, wrap it in excuses, and feed it to me like a pill I was supposed to swallow. She was ready with rehearsed lines about misunderstanding and loneliness. I did not allow her the opportunity. I told her we could discuss everything, but not here. I said the conversation deserved an official environment. She assumed I wanted legal separation or perhaps marital counseling. She did not know I had spent half the night gathering evidence. Every message she sent to that man, every picture, every transaction, every late night withdrawal, every detail was now sitting safely in a folder with timestamps and bank records. I had never imagined I would become an archivist of my own humiliation, yet here I was, turning pain into preparation. I asked her to meet me at the police station later that afternoon. The look in her eyes confused me at first. It was not fear. It was relief. She believed I was finally broken enough to involve authorities, hoping they might convince me to walk away quietly. She promised she would be there. I nodded, keeping my voice controlled, my expressions neutral, and my plans hidden. When I arrived at the station, I felt a sensation I had never associated with that place. I felt power. I handed every file and document to the investigators. The case was no longer about marital betrayal. It had evolved into something far darker. Her lover was not just a man who invaded my home. He was part of a growing fraud operation under investigation for months. They needed one link to complete the chain. I gave them the missing piece without saying a single bitter word. While the officers studied the data, I remained seated, calm, and composed. They asked if I understood the implications. I nodded. They asked if I needed protection. I shook my head. They assumed I wanted revenge. They were mistaken. Revenge requires emotional investment. What I wanted was separation from everything contaminated. When she arrived, she looked confused to find me seated comfortably rather than pacing or trembling. She opened her mouth, ready to deliver her excuses. The officers interrupted her, asking about her relationship with the man she had chosen over her marriage. She froze. For the first time, her confidence cracked. She tried to speak, but her words stumbled. The officers took notes. She looked at me with disbelief, as if I had betrayed her. I offered no explanation. Her actions belonged to her. Mine belonged to my survival. As I walked out of the station, the sun felt brighter than usual. She thought I was protecting her reputation. What I had protected was my exit. I did not slam a door. I removed the walls altogether. She still did not understand it, but the floor beneath her life had already begun to crumble. The day after the visit to the police station, I woke earlier than usual. My mind was sharp, not heavy. There's a remarkable moment that occurs when a person understands they no longer belong to the past they lived in. I was no longer a husband trying to fix something broken. I was a man constructing a controlled exit. The betrayal had not shattered me. It had merely redirected my attention. She still believed she understood me. That belief was my greatest advantage. At noon, she sent me a message asking when we would continue our conversation. She sounded confident, convinced that her tears or manipulation would eventually soften me. She thought I was emotionally fragile. She did not realize that she had ended that version of me the night she laughed. I ignored her message and went straight to my lawyer. I had prepared a plan during the long hours of the previous night. The house we lived in had always been her pride. She showed it to friends and family as proof of emotional stability and personal success. She believed it represented what she had achieved in life. She did not know what lay beneath its walls. My lawyer reviewed the documents with calm precision. He asked if I was certain. I answered without hesitation. The property was filled with secret responsibilities she never took the time to understand. Every unpaid tax, every loan, every repair order, every pending inspection, every detail she ignored because she was too busy constructing fantasies outside our marriage was waiting for someone careless enough to claim ownership. I signed the transfer documents and made her the sole owner. I felt no remorse. A signature can be more powerful than a confrontation. A quiet pen can do what a loud voice never could. The next morning, the delivery service left an envelope at her office. She called me almost immediately. Her voice trembled slightly, not because she was afraid, but because she was confused. She thought it was divorce paperwork. She planned to play the victim and pretend that she wanted to save the marriage. I let her speak. I listened to every word she produced, every attempt to create sympathy. Only when she finished did I inform her that I had already signed everything she needed. She did not understand. She insisted on meeting. I agreed. When she arrived, she carried the envelope as if it were a trophy she had won. She opened it with a triumphant smile. She expected to see legal separation or confessions of guilt. Instead, she found a property transfer confirming that she now owned the entire house. Her eyes widened with satisfaction. She believed I was defeated. She believed guilt had driven me to abandon everything. She believed she had won. She did not read beyond the first page. She did not notice the attachments detailing unpaid balances, structural issues, loan maturities, interest calculations, and municipal penalties. She saw only ownership, not obligation. She hugged the papers like a new prize. She thought she had taken something from me. In reality, she had accepted the weight I no longer wished to carry. She went home that night with the confidence of someone who had conquered an enemy. She slept in the bed where she destroyed her marriage, believing she had outsmarted the man she once underestimated. I watched her leave with a calm heart. I did not need to raise my voice. I did not need to explain myself. Some truths do not need to be spoken. They reveal themselves. That night, she celebrated privately. She believed she had secured her future. She had no idea she had just inherited a storm. The next sunrise would not bring peace. It would bring understanding. The first crack in her confidence appeared 3 days after she became the owner of the house. She tried to call the man she sacrificed everything for, the man she thought would build a new life with her now that I was out of the picture. His phone went straight to voicemail. She called again. No answer. She visited the apartment where she had spent so many secret evenings. The door was open, the rooms empty, and the silence inside that place spoke louder than any explanation. Every trace of him was gone. Clothes, furniture, photographs. Even the scent she used to bring back home was missing. She came back home unsettled, imagining it was temporary, convinced he would reappear with a charming excuse. That was her first mistake. Her second was believing she still understood the rules of the game. I knew she would search for him. I also knew she would not find him. His absence was not an accident. It was a consequence. She assumed he disappeared out of fear because the police now had evidence. She had no idea that disappearing was part of his nature. He was a shadow who fed on people who believed fantasies over facts. She was his latest fantasy. She thought she controlled him. She was wrong. He used her name to build things she never noticed, and I made sure the authorities could connect those dots without any effort. It started subtly. A phone call from an unknown number. The person on the line wanted to confirm certain financial transactions linked to the house. She denied everything, confident that she had nothing to do with those matters. That call was only a pebble. The avalanche came later. On a quiet afternoon, 2 detectives came to speak with her. They entered our home, now legally her property, and asked for her cooperation. She tried to play offended, pretending she was a confused spouse dealing with a vindictive husband and a missing companion. The detectives listened politely and then placed several documents on the table. They included a list of financial transfers, coded messages, and bank accounts created in her name. Her handwriting appeared on forms she did not remember signing. Her face lost its color as she followed the trail of numbers that connected her to someone she believed she loved. I watched everything from distance. I never interfered, never added a word, never defended her, and never condemned her. She did not realize that the man she trusted had used her personal information. She had given him access without hesitation, believing that love required transparency. While she opened her heart, he opened her financial life. He used her identity the way a locksmith uses a master key. He was not building a future with her. He was building an escape route. The detectives explained that her lover was already under investigation for a network involving fraudulent investments and identity laundering. They told her he used relationships as a cover, moving funds through people who believed in him. She was not a random target. She was chosen because she was married to someone stable, someone financially responsible, someone who would never suspect her until it was too late. They said it gently, but the truth was harsh. She was not a victim. She was a participant in the records. She tried to explain that she was unaware, that she never agreed to any of this, that she loved the man and believed he loved her. The detectives listened without emotion. They showed her signature on multiple documents. They showed her pictures entering places she did not remember visiting. Her lover had documented everything. He left nothing behind except evidence. In that moment, she finally understood the scale of her mistake. The romance she guarded like a precious secret was not love. It was preparation for her downfall. She had not been chosen for affection. She had been selected for utility. She once mocked my calm. Now calm was all she had left. The walls she believed were protecting her were closing in, and this time, no amount of charm could open a door. The morning began like any other, except for the tension that lingered in the air. She brewed her coffee with the exaggerated calm of someone who feared an uninvited truth. I could sense her impatience. She kept glancing at me as if waiting for me to crumble. She believed I was losing control, that the situation with her missing lover and the detectives would eventually force me into an emotional collapse. She underestimated how prepared I was for the days ahead. I knew what was coming long before she heard the knock. Around noon, someone pounded on the door with a rhythm that did not belong to neighbors or delivery drivers. She froze mid-step. Her eyes widened, but she hid her panic behind a soft smile, pretending she expected a package. I remained seated, curious to see how she would react. The door opened, and two uniformed officers entered the house with a seriousness that absorbed all sound in the room. They addressed me by my full name and asked me to stand. She stepped aside, watching with the fascination of someone who believed justice was finally serving her secret desires. They informed me that an old accusation had resurfaced. I recognized the name attached to it, a name I once trusted. The case was dormant for years until someone awakened it. I could already tell who made that call. Someone had understood her pattern, her need to turn every conflict into a personal victory. She did not know that pushing a man who has nothing left to lose creates a force she cannot anticipate. She believed she had the upper hand because the police were now looking at me instead of her. As they handcuffed me, she placed her hand over her mouth, pretending to be shocked. The performance was almost impressive. She whispered that she never imagined this would happen. Her words sounded rehearsed. She tried to comfort me with a tone filled with false concern. She wanted the officers to believe she was innocent, that she was a loyal spouse watching her husband pay for something she did not understand. She looked at me, waiting for fear to show on my face. Instead, I smiled. It was not a smile of defeat. It was the smile of a man who sees the final piece of a puzzle fall into place. She misread it, thinking my mind had broken under pressure. She believed jail would crush me, that confinement would silence any plans I had and leave me powerless. She had no idea that what she considered punishment was an environment I could use. The officers escorted me out of the house. I did not resist. I lifted my head and observed the ceiling before crossing the threshold, not because I was saying goodbye, but because I wanted to remember the place where trust died. She stood behind me, her arms crossed, convinced the story had finally turned in her favor. She believed the next chapter would end with her as the innocent survivor of a failed marriage. She thought a prison cell would erase my influence from her life. She never questioned why the accusation reappeared at that exact moment. She never wondered who benefited from my absence. She did not realize she was being studied by the very people she hoped would destroy me. She assumed I had lost control. She confused silence with surrender. She did not understand that I was not trying to escape the consequences. I was guiding them. As a police car drove away, I saw her through the rear window. She looked triumphant, convinced that she had finally won, unaware that every door she believed was closing on me was opening behind her. The system she thought would bury me was already preparing to bury her. The first night in my cell was silent, colder than I expected, yet strangely comfortable. I lay on the narrow bed and listened to the distant echo of metal doors closing. Most people imagine prison as a place that strips a man of his power. In my case, it did the opposite. It removed distractions. No marriage to defend, no lies to untangle, no pretense to maintain. It was the first time in a long while that I could think without interruption. She believed my arrest would destroy me. She did not realize she had given me time, and time in the hands of someone who understands purpose is not a prison. It is a forge. On the third day, after morning roll call, the guard brought me paper and a pen. He did not ask questions. He simply placed them on the table and walked away. My thoughts flowed easily. I was not seeking reconciliation. I was not begging her to explain her betrayal. I was documenting the truth she refused to acknowledge. A truth she helped build without realizing it. Every action she took had created a consequence. Every decision she justified in secret had produced a ripple. She thought I was drowning. I was measuring the tide. I wrote slowly, not out of hesitation, but because every word carried weight. I wanted her to feel each sentence like a distant thunder she could not locate. I did not accuse her. I did not express anger. That would make me small, and I had outgrown the version of myself that sought validation from someone who fed on deceit. I simply reminded her of a reality she believed she controlled. She thought betrayal was a weapon that would sever connection. She did not consider that betrayal also documents itself. When I finished, I folded the paper with care and sealed it. I gave it to the guard and requested it be delivered. He nodded without emotion, as if he understood this letter was not a message. It was a trigger. She received it the next afternoon while sitting in the living room of the house she now owned. I later learned she hesitated before opening it. She expected remorse. She anticipated apologies about the past or pleas about the future. She believed my arrest had humbled me. She genuinely thought the cell had broken my pride. She had not realized pride was never my foundation. Awareness was. She opened the envelope. She read the message. Her hands trembled. The silence in the room changed shape. Walls that once felt protective now felt alert. My words were not aggressive. They were a mirror. I wrote that she taught me everything I needed to understand about consequences and that it was time for her to observe how they grow. There were no accusations. There was no begging. My certainty unsettled her. For the first time since she began her secret life, she did not know what move to make. She had gained the advantage she wanted, yet felt none of the victory she imagined. She had removed me from the house, but I was still present in every decision she had made. Authority without understanding always collapses, and she sensed that collapse near her doorstep. That night, she could not sleep. Her lover was gone. The detectives were circling. The house she claimed as a trophy was beginning to feel like a burden. The letter did not threaten her. It reminded her that I was not reacting anymore. I was acting. She won the argument, but she had no idea which game she was in. Control is not taken by force. Control reveals itself when silence unnerves the guilty. I did not need to see her face to know she finally understood something dangerous. She did not imprison me. She freed me. The days inside the cell blended together, yet each one carried a different flavor of satisfaction. I did not reach out to her. I did not ask about lawyers or hearings. I did not try to explain myself to anyone. Silence became my tool, and I used it more effectively than any spoken accusation ever could. I had learned that people who depend on noise collapse when forced to face quiet. She was such a person. Her identity fed on attention. Without it, she had nothing. I heard from another inmate that she was calling mutual friends, trying to understand why I had not attempted to contact her. She expected panic, desperation, or anger. She expected explanations. Instead, she faced a void. Silence is not empty. Silence holds every truth a person is afraid to admit, and she was beginning to hear all of them at once. Weeks passed, and not a single update came from my legal team. I instructed them not to rush anything. The longer the stillness around her life, the more fragile she became. She relied on external validation, on the illusion that she was admired. With me gone, that illusion began to evaporate. Her friends started avoiding her. Their conversations shifted from curiosity to caution. No one wanted to be associated with someone who might be implicated in a scandal. Her family, who once admired our marriage and praised her choices, now kept their distance. They did not confront her. They did not offer comfort. They simply retreated. A person can endure confrontation, but isolation is a punishment that does not announce itself. It just grows until the walls feel smaller and the air feels heavier. She lived inside that pressure every single day. She avoided the neighborhood. She feared the glance of strangers. She feared the silence of people who once greeted her warmly. Gossip did not attack her directly. It lingered like smoke. No one accused her of anything, yet everyone suspected something. Her reputation was not destroyed with a scandal. It eroded quietly. This was the cruelty of her new reality. She was not publicly humiliated. She was privately irrelevant. I did not need to orchestrate any of it. She had built her social worth on borrowed stability. I was that stability. I was the proof that she had succeeded. Without me, her stories had no foundation. She feared losing the image of a woman desired and respected. She discovered that the world had not admired her. The world had admired who stood beside her. The detectives continued their work, yet they did not call her for weeks. The absence of questioning became a form of torture. She expected an arrest or a clearance. She received neither. The uncertainty gnawed at her. Every silence felt like a countdown she could not see. She waited for news that never came. She watched the days pass without direction or purpose. My name was no longer tied to hers. People spoke of me with curiosity and respect. They spoke of her with caution and confusion. It was not because I sought sympathy. It was because silence reveals more about a person than any evidence. She realized that losing a husband was not her punishment. Losing the identity she forged through him was. She had never feared my departure. She feared what her life would look like without my presence giving it shape. She feared that people would see her without the mask marriage had provided. She feared the truth behind her own reflection. Inside my cell, I was not waiting for release. I was observing transformation. She believed I was the one trapped. She did not understand that cages are built from perception. She had lost hers. The silence she ignored at first became the only voice she could hear. And it was louder than any revenge I could have spoken. Nights in my cell were my quiet allies. They allowed me to imagine the outside world reshaping itself without my presence. I did not need updates. I knew her mind well enough to understand what silence was doing to her. She depended on certainty, on routines she controlled, on stories she could finish. Once those routines fractured, the rest would follow. All I had to do was wait. I pictured her evenings alone in that house she once celebrated. The same walls that held her secrets now held her fears. She tried to convince herself that everything was under control, yet she could not shake the sensation that something was turning against her. Without anyone to reassure her, the smallest sound became a message, and the quietest moment became a threat. She had believed that my arrest was the end of our story. She had no idea it was merely the end of her illusion. One night, when the darkness felt thicker and her thoughts refused to rest, she heard footsteps outside. They did not rush or hesitate. They simply existed, like a presence that was not hiding. She froze near the living room window, her eyes darting across the shadows. The footsteps stopped, yet nothing announced a departure. Her breath grew shallow. She waited for someone to knock or speak, but the silence remained intact. Fear does not need noise. Fear only needs imagination. She approached the door, trying to convince herself she was not scared. The handle felt colder than usual. She opened it slowly, expecting someone to be on the other side. There was no one. The night looked ordinary, but her body refused the idea that everything was normal. At her feet sat a box, wrapped in black ribbon, unmarked, unclaimed, unexplained. Her heart pounded as she stared at it. She wanted to close the door and pretend it was not there. Yet curiosity works like gravity. She picked it up, but did not open it. The weight felt wrong. Too light to matter, too heavy to ignore. She carried it inside, placed it on the table, and stepped back like it was an animal she could not predict. Every instinct told her this box was not a gift. It was a question. Hours passed. She walked around it, unable to sit still. She called no one. She trusted no one. Her lover was gone, her friends were distant, and her family avoided her. For the first time, she understood what isolation feels like when there's no one to blame. She thought about throwing the box away, but something about it held her attention hostage. It had arrived without permission, yet belonged to her more than anything she owned. While she watched it, memories she tried to bury resurfaced one by one. She thought about the detectives. She thought about the documents she never read. She thought about the silence I maintained. Every choice she made, every lie she told, every step she took without me felt present in that small object. The house seemed to shrink around her. She did not hear voices, yet her mind whispered the same question repeatedly. Why her she reached for the box multiple times, only to pull her hand away. Her body trembled, though the air was still. Time moved, but she did not feel it. The world she once controlled had changed roles. She no longer observed it. It observed her. The box remained still, yet it felt alive, as if waiting for her to open something far more dangerous than a lid. When she finally placed her hand on it, she understood something she had ignored for weeks. Silence is not empty. It is preparation. She thought she had buried the past. She was about to learn that the past does not die. It returns when the world grows quiet enough to hear it knock. She could not sleep the night the box arrived. Every time she closed her eyes, her mind returned to it like a door she refused to open. Objects become dangerous when they carry unanswered questions, and this one held more than she wanted to face. Her confidence had cracked long before this moment, but now fear stood beside her, waiting for her decision. She finally sat at the table, inhaled deeply, and reached for the ribbon. Her hand shook, not from cold but from memory. When the ribbon came loose, she hesitated again. There was no sound, no movement, no warning. The lid lifted without resistance. Inside, she saw something so simple that her breath left her body. My wedding ring rested in the center, polished and flawless, as if untouched by betrayal. It seemed impossible. She was certain I no longer cared, yet the ring looked as if I had cared enough to prepare it. For several minutes, she stared at it, unable to process its meaning. A ring is not merely metal. It holds a past. It carries promises, even broken ones. She lifted it with trembling fingers, expecting weight. It was lighter than she remembered, and that unsettled her more than anything else. She searched the box again, hoping to find something she could dismiss. Instead, she found a folded sheet of paper beneath the spot where the ring had rested. Her throat tightened. She unfolded the paper slowly. She expected apologies. She expected confessions. She had rehearsed a script in her mind, one where I begged for closure and admitted defeat. The message was short. It did not comfort her. It did not accuse her. It simply pushed every excuse she had ever used into a corner she could no longer escape. I wrote that she had freed me and that now she needed to free herself from the lies she created. The words did not shout. They did not plead. They existed with the certainty of someone who no longer carries attachment. She read the message again and again, waiting for hidden meaning. None appeared. The truth was in its simplicity. She did not destroy me. She released me. There is a difference, and she had never considered it. Her hands shook more violently now. She placed the ring on the table, but it no longer looked like a symbol of love. It looked like a reflection of her choices. She saw not what she had gained, but what she had lost. My absence was not her victory. It was her void. She had won the argument, yet lost the story she believed she controlled. She tried to convince herself that the message was a trick. She wanted to believe that I was trying to provoke her. Yet the silence that followed the letter was not threatening. It was final. There were no instructions. There was no request. There was only a reminder of consequences she set in motion herself. Her breathing grew uneven. The house that once felt like a trophy now felt like a witness. The ring seemed to stare at her. She wanted to leave the room, but the air felt heavier near the door. She moved slowly, as if something unseen held her in place. Every sound in the house echoed louder than it should. Even her footsteps frightened her. She placed the ring back in the box, but the damage was already done. It was not the object that frightened her. It was the realization that the narrative had shifted. She was no longer the woman who replaced her husband with a lover. She was the woman who was replaced by her own decisions. The box did not punish her. It revealed her. And some revelations are heavier than any sentence a courtroom could deliver. When I placed the box in motion, I knew the ring would strike first, but the ring was never the end. It was simply the opening act. Guilt attaches itself to symbols, but truth attaches itself to proof, and proof never needs interpretation. She discovered that lesson the moment her hands failed her. After reading the message, she tried to put the ring back inside the box. Her fingers slipped. The metal hit the floor with a faint sound that cut through the silence like a blade. She bent down to pick it up, but her eyes caught something beneath the cardboard. A corner of glossy paper peeked from under the lining. The box had a hidden layer she never noticed. Her curiosity overpowered her fear. She pulled the lining up, and what she found underneath broke the last illusion she still held. There were photographs, dozens of them. Each one captured a scene she had never imagined, though deep inside, she had always feared something was wrong. Her lover was not missing. He was busy. Each photo showed him with different women in different cities, always smiling, always close, always attentive. The man she sacrificed her marriage for had repeated the same script with others. The secret trip she once believed was romantic now looked like a routine rehearsal. The lies she accepted so easily had not been crafted just for her. They were mass-produced. She stared at a picture of him holding hands with a woman outside a hotel. The date printed on the back matched a night she claimed he was working. Her hands shook as she moved to the next one. In another photo, he was whispering into someone's ear, the same way he whispered into hers when he convinced her that love required risk. In a third, he was laughing. Not a polite laugh, a cruel laugh. The kind of laugh someone makes when they know they have already won. She kept pulling out picture after picture. Each one destroyed something she once believed was real. She flipped through them desperately, hoping to find at least one moment that belonged to her alone. There was none. The affair she believed was special had never existed. She was not chosen. She was selected. A participant, not a partner. A name on a list, not a name in a heart. The hallway echoed her breathing before it echoed something else. Her knees gave out, and she dropped the entire stack of photos. The images scattered across the floor like reminders of everything she refused to see. Her hands covered her mouth, but silence could not contain the weight of her discovery. Her scream tore through the house, raw and unrestrained. It was not the scream of a woman who lost love. It was the scream of a woman who realized she never had it. The scream of someone who finally understood that betrayal had levels she never considered. Neighbors heard her. Lights turned on. Curtains moved. People wondered what she was suffering from, but none dared approach. The house that once symbolized her new beginning had become a witness to her undoing. She called no one. No one would have listened. Sympathy requires innocence, and she no longer possessed any. In that moment, her world did not collapse because I left. It collapsed because she realized she had destroyed herself for a man who never planned to stay. Every lie she accepted had multiplied, and those lies now stared back at her through faces she did not recognize. I did not celebrate her scream. I did not need to. A scream born from realization does not require applause. It requires silence, and silence was the only thing she had left. Freedom does not arrive with applause. It arrives quietly, like a breath you did not realize you were holding. When I walked out of that cell weeks later, I carried no anger. I left my resentment behind those metal bars. I had no desire to confront her, punish her, or claim what was once mine. Life has a way of finishing conversations that pride begins. I simply stepped into the world with a certainty she never expected. I had discovered something far more powerful than revenge. I had discovered myself. I found work again with ease. People respected my calm, my discipline, and my refusal to speak badly of anyone. They admired that I endured humiliation without turning bitter. Success did not return to me suddenly. It returned gradually, like a sunrise that insists on being noticed. Every step I took was deliberate. Every choice was clean. I rebuilt my life not to prove anything to her, but because peace cannot grow in the soil of explanation. It grows in the soil of clarity. My phone remained silent. She never called. She could not. Pride prevents a person from seeking help from the one who knows their truth. She did not reach out, yet she followed every rumor about me. She became a spectator in a story she once believed she controlled. The world no longer saw her as someone who had left her husband. They saw her as someone who chased something that did not want her. That was a different kind of exposure, the kind no apology can repair. Her house, the one she celebrated as a victory, became her burden. The debts tied to it arrived like uninvited guests. Bills increased. Repairs surfaced. Taxes demanded attention. She could not sell it. Her name was attached to every liability. She remained anchored to a property that looked like wealth but behaved like a sentence. Nights grew longer. Days grew quieter. Silence became her companion. I learned through others that she stopped attending social gatherings. She avoided mirrors. She avoided people who once admired her. Without an audience, she became invisible. The life she tried to build without me had no foundation because it did not begin with truth. She thought she feared losing a husband. In reality, she feared losing the identity my presence had given her. From a distance, I watched my life expand. I met people who valued my character, not my silence. I built friendships, reconnected with family, and discovered that dignity is not something you demand. It is something you carry. Opportunities appeared as if they had been waiting for me to move aside from the wrong story. I did not speak her name. I did not need to. A name loses its power when its actions speak for it. One afternoon, I passed near the neighborhood where we once lived. My steps slowed when I approached the street. I did not stop. I did not turn my head. I simply continued walking. In that moment, I understood something she never learned. Closure is not what you receive. It is what you decide. The past does not disappear. It becomes irrelevant when you outgrow it. People often ask whether I regret anything. I do not. Pain teaches what comfort hides. Betrayal teaches what loyalty ignores. I did not lose a marriage. I lost an illusion. She did not lose a man. She lost the man she made possible through her own choices. I became someone she cannot reach, not because I escaped her, but because she cannot follow where truth lives. Some stories end loudly. Mine ended quietly. I did not take revenge. I did not destroy her. I allowed truth to do what truth always does. It revealed everything. Some betrayals end relationships. This one ended the betrayer.